All right, folks, welcome back to Green Pill, where we focus on making health simple for you, but more importantly, for your family, loved ones, community, and even the country where you live. Today's guest is Mikayla Williams, licensed professional counselor, national certified counselor. Today's episode is interesting because I initially recorded it for my mini podcast, which is an effort to get in touch with therapists, show them what I do, learn about what they do, feature them. And the podcast was so compelling with Mikayla that I said, what, this is going to go on my main podcast. A lot more people need to hear this. This is just an incredible conversation. I felt maybe more than any other podcast I'd done to that point that we connected. I heard her story and she heard mine. And this podcast is all about, what does grief mean? How can you deal with it? Because we're all going to deal with it. The only two things guaranteed in life are death and taxes. And how can you prepare and go through it in a mindful way? So Mikayla runs Mindful Movements Counseling outside Houston, Texas. This conversation is really vulnerable on my part. I talk about my mom passing away, my family. She tells the whole story of how her dad took his own life when she was a teenager and how she was able to get through that and the kind of cascading effects that had on her for the next 5, 10, even more years, and how she was able to alchemize that extremely, extremely tough situation into becoming who she is today and really finding her purpose and her mission in life. If you want to hear an inspiring conversation, if you want to get deep into grief, into anxiety, into trauma with someone who's a pro at it, look no further. All right, without further ado, here we go, Mikayla Williams on Green Pill. All right, Mikayla Williams, welcome to Green Pill. First question before I introduce you, will you take the green pill?
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, so Mikayla is an LPC, NCC. She's the head and founder of Mindful Movements Counseling down in Woodlands, Texas, near Houston. Today, we're here to talk about the grief gap in our country, talking about grief generally, Mikayla's journey, my journey as it relates to grief, and how she really made helping folks with that and some other pieces, her journey in life, and how she really turned her life around from a really tough time when her dad had passed away when she was 16. So Mikayla, we've got a lot to talk about today. I guess maybe you could just start by talking about what happened, when you were a teenager and how it happened. And I think you mentioned your dad had, there was some mental health stuff going on before he had passed away. Would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of witnessed some mental health struggles just as a whole with my family and resulting from a lot of childhood trauma that they had and just struggles in life and, trying to get out of it over and over. And it just, every time it seemed like they just couldn't. It was such a cycle. And so, fast forward, I feel like I have broken that cycle, which is really exciting. But, um, I watched him in a suicidal mindset my entire life, and I think I always knew it was coming. That
Mm,
didn't make it any less hard or any less devastating. So when I was 16, all the signs were there. I mean, but you don't notice that. They're so subtle, especially when you're so young. And I mean, you don't want to see those things. And so he died by suicide, and it completely destroyed me. I carried a ton of guilt for a very, very long time. I think there's probably an ounce left that might never leave. But for the most part,
mm,
I think I've separated that and logically can sit with it's not my fault. Um, but it was 6 months, a solid 6 months of just, I can't get out of bed. I can't talk to any friends. I can't sit here and pretend like everything's okay. How dare the sun come up every day when
mm,
I just need to hit pause? And there was one morning I just woke up and I was like, what? I have a choice. It wasn't even a conscious thought. It was just kind of a thought that came into my mind that didn't really feel like mine. It was like you either get up and you go forward from here or you're going to go down a path that isn't very pretty. And so I got up and I threw myself into school. I very much identified with that loss and that pain. And I think I needed to for a while. That's not healthy long term, but I think short term, it defined me for a bit and that kept me going. And then I found my own purpose later. But for a while that sat with me as my purpose until I didn't need it to be anymore. Um, and here we are now. I do counseling. I focus a lot with grief and childhood trauma. So, kind of a
Mhm.
synopsis of just the journey.
Thank you. What drove you forward, like in those first well, let's say first year or two, where you said that that was your purpose, and then later you found your own. So, what was the
Yeah.
thinking every day once you got out of bed? Once those 6 months were up, and you started really pushing on school. What was the thought hammering in your mind, or the belief, or the emotion that kept you going?
I don't remember the exact words. Again, this is a thought that I feel like and this is where my faith really was
Hmm.
strengthened in this experience, and it was like God placed a thought in my head that I don't remember the exact words, but something
Hmm.
like, "You've gotta do something with this. Your job is to
Hmm.
help people."
Hmm.
And, I wish I could remember what the exact thought was, but it was something along those lines, and I didn't really know what that meant. But I knew that I was supposed to go to school and provide some sort of mental health support. And at one point, I wanted to have some sort of nonprofit center.
Hmm.
And then that kind of transformed into counseling instead. And even within that, it's like, what path do I go down? And it kind of just fell into place with each decision I had to make on that route. But it really was just you have to help people with a similar struggle.
Hmm.
And and I took that and I ran with it and was like, I don't know what the end looks like, but I'm just gonna go. And I did.
So even at the age of 17, which some people think is young, but definitely, me going through my mom's passing at 17, it changed me and it made me grow up
Mhm.
real quick.
Yeah.
So I imagine it felt kind of similar. So even at 17, you were looking at the end of high school, college, and you were like, "What? This is the path. I've got to do something to help other people."
Mhm.
And did that change your social life at the time? I know you had a boyfriend at the time. How was it with your mom? How did this mind shift? I mean, how did your dad's passing really change your social life and the relationships around you?
Yeah, it changed everything.
Everything.
And I would imagine you probably have a similar experience, but with friends, I think I was caught up in, high school drama and
Hmm.
just like the gossip. It was a pretty small school and everyone knew everything.
Hmm.
And after that, after losing my dad, it's like this doesn't matter. This isn't important. I think my friends didn't really know how to be there. And so and I separated myself. It's, not
Hmm.
on them, but I really pulled back. And my boyfriend at the time, who was a great, great friend to me, we were together for like 4.5 years, and I'm really thankful that he
Wow.
was there to support me. He witnessed everything. He would just hold me and he's like, I don't know what to say, but I'm
Hmm.
here. That's all I needed. I don't think my family members knew what to say either. It's like, what do you say? My
Hmm.
mom and dad had separated years and years before. So they didn't really have a relationship. And so I felt kind of alone in that pain. It was like, they weren't really hurting, it was really just me, and, his side of the family, who I've actually recently reconnected with, I didn't really have a relationship with them back then, so it was really just relying on my boyfriend and, I think my, mom's side of the family, it was more just, like, taking care of the basic needs, making sure I would eat, um, and, I made it through, but, yeah, I really disconnected from a lot of those friends and, just needed to kinda separate and focus on what mattered and figure that out as I went.
And so I wonder, and we'll get into it later on, how you counsel folks experiencing similar grief. And it sounds like one of those axioms or tips or maxims might be find a purpose, or find something that you can throw yourself into.
Yeah.
Is that like fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely, and I tell people too, even distraction while you need it is
Hmm.
great. It's like you just have to get through it, and eventually you'll be able to to work with it. When with grief and specifically traumatic grief, it's like you just get get through the days where you feel like you can't breathe,
Hmm.
and eventually you can take a breath again, and that's when I feel like the real healing starts. So, I tell people kind of dismiss distraction and label it as kind of an unhealthy coping mechanism, but sometimes that's what you gotta do,
Hmm.
and sometimes you do identify with things completely and it becomes your whole life, and that's okay temporarily, and I emphasize that. It's a temporary solution, and then eventually we build something new. We build something different, create a new normal.
And when someone, and maybe actually, could you give a few examples or one or two of like a what you might call an obsession or perhaps a distraction that somebody might throw themselves into, and maybe yours was school, I think, at that
Mhm.
time. What else do people
Yes.
find?
Yeah, so, I had worked with someone who threw herself into volunteering in
Okay.
an area where she had, suffered an experience. She threw
Hmm.
herself into, volunteering with that population, which
Hmm.
I think proved very hard for her, but I think it helped her process what happened to her.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing I think is just, any sort of new hobby that maybe if you lose someone who's like obsessed with gardening and you take up
Hmm.
gardening and you kind of make that your big thing for a while and you feel connected to that person, that's okay, and then eventually you build on that. I recently saw a story where someone's mom who had passed loved purple, and then this person only wore purple for, like, a year. So, that's okay, it's just we gotta do what we gotta do.
And just going back to you, so for you it was school, and how long did that last? And I know you shared this with me in our conversation. How long did this kind of school and build yourself up as either nonprofit or counselor, how
Yeah.
long did that go for? And then when did you feel like you could take a breath?
That's a good question. I think it was gradual. I think for a while, I didn't realize I was identifying with it. When I was a junior in college, I was like, I only have a year left and I have no social life. I have great grades. My grades definitely dipped senior year because I was like, I need friends. I need a life. I need something outside of this
Mhm,
because this has all just passed me by. I think that was the first realization of like, hey, this isn't healthy to just completely dive into it. I think I felt guilty for having any sort of fun. It's like
mm,
my only purpose is to just help someone and help someone not experience what I did or help someone through it. And that, I was like, that's not actually all I'm here for. I'm here to also have a life. And so that was step one. And then actually, when I was not quite halfway, but a little bit through my master's program, I started with a focus on addictions. And I was like, I want to help people struggling with drug addiction. And, that's thinking that that's how I help people similar to my dad.
mhm,
And someone was like, look, you're chasing him and you
mm,
need to stop. Someone literally said that to me.
wow,
And I completely uprooted my life and transferred to a different university to finish my master's program and then focused on what I wanted to focus on. And I think that was finally when I realized I have identified with this for I guess it was probably, I don't know, 5, 6 years.
mhm,
And at that point that's when I was like, what I need to focus on what I actually love, and I focused on play therapy, which I don't do anymore because
mhm.
I like my adults, my teens, but, I focused on that, and it was so powerful, and I use a lot of those techniques even with teens and adults, but that's what I was passionate about, and so I focused on that instead, and now it's really integrated all together, but I completely uprooted my life, and now this is for me now.
Like, pretty instantly, and, so junior in college or maybe 20 or so, and, that's when you kind of gave yourself permission to have a life again,
Yes.
quote unquote, be normal.
Mhm.
Whether, and then like as you were finishing or a year out from your master's, somebody knocked on your shoulder and said, "Hey, you're kind of just chasing this story about your dad, and you're not maybe being true to who you are, but you're trying to serve him or serve people like him. And so
Yeah.
that just clicked for you and you were able to
Yes.
completely do a 180.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess how did you support yourself in those 5, 6 years in terms of mental health, physical health, emotional health, food, exercise? Like, did give me the real deal. Was it terrible? Was it ramen noodles and no therapy? Did you have access to therapy? Was it somewhere in between? What got you through it
Yeah.
and what didn't?
Yeah. So, well, food was, college. I think I ate pretty normal for a college student, but looking back, I'm like, I loved that stovetop stuffing. I would eat on that, like, every day. That's terrible. But I guess that was normal, and my body could handle it better back then.
Mhm,
So that aspect, I probably wasn't the healthiest with my diet, but I had dogs, and so I got 1 dog in high school shortly after I lost my dad. I think his name's Oscar, I still have him,
wow.
still my little baby. I think he helped me more than I realized, and then 2 years later, I adopted June, and we would walk, we would go everywhere, travel, explore, and so they would force me I was in an apartment, obviously, they
Mhm,
would force me to get out of my apartment because I had to take them out, and so
mhm,
it forced me to be active, it forced me to go just explore, College Station, and there's a few really cool, like, walking trails and all that, and so I wouldn't have done that otherwise. I would have just sat in my apartment probably and, so I think my dogs were honestly the biggest thing that helped get me through. Um, and then just, I'm good at being alone too, so I valued my alone time.
mhm.
But I had
Studying and
good
stuff.
balance. Right. And I had a job all through college. I had 2 jobs for a little while, so that got me out of the house as well. I had some connections with other people and I loved my job. I wish I could just do that forever, honestly.
What
It was
was
so
your
much
job?
fun. I was an Avid tutor. Have you heard of Avid?
Mm-mm.
No, it's like to simplify it, like a college prep program, and so I
Uh-huh.
worked with, 6th either 5th and 6th or 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, somewhere around there, and it was so much fun, I loved it. When I graduated and left, I was like, "Man, I wish this could just be my job,"
What
but
did
I
you
like
love
what I
about
do.
working to those kids?
So, it's actually very similar to counseling, and I had
Okay.
no idea that I was really setting myself up for that, and they probably don't even realize that, but you use a lot of Socratic questioning in Avid tutoring, and you're not giving the answer, you're not telling them what to do, you are helping them figure it out for themselves, and so, the questions that we had were mainly math, and so they would put up a math problem, and we would ask questions, myself as the tutor and the group of students. We would ask the presenting student questions until they reach the conclusion on their own, which
Mm,
is counseling. That's what counseling is we help you find the answer for yourself. So it was really cool. And I loved that age group. So just
definitely trained your listening skills, I'm sure, or your ability to
yes.
ask open-ended questions, which
Right.
and then
Yeah.
pause and listen, which is,
Right.
so important for therapists
Hmm.
and counselors, and I actually find myself as a coach nowadays that when I talk to folks like you, I'm amazed because I still wanna jump in and say something. And
Yeah.
when I talk to my clients, I have to pause and remind myself that I need to let them finish and not to just tell them what to do. So,
It's
uh,
hard.
it is, but I feel like you had a lot of training in it, and,
Yes.
so you're going into kind of finishing up your master's, you uproot, switch directions, switch universities. Is that, which university did you switch to? And then where'd you move to, and what'd you focus on? Play, you said, to finish?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started my master's at A&M Corpus Christi and my apartment was beautiful. I loved the town. I loved everything about it, but I just didn't ever feel like it was right. And so when it honestly was a stranger who said that to me, which was very bizarre.
Mm,
She was in one of my classes and the boldness to say that is
mhm,
crazy, and it was the best thing for me, the absolute best thing, I'm so thankful for that. So I transferred to Sam Houston in Huntsville, which is where me and my husband reconnected, so it was, like, all so meant to be.
wow,
It was perfect and just definitely felt right. So I trust things like that, and again, that's where
mhm,
my faith gets strengthened through and through. It's like, I just have to listen and go with what's provided and what's presented. Um, I'm kind of jumping back, but I did go to counseling through all of this.
mm.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, that
weekly,
was very important
biweekly,
too. I went
group,
kind of off and
individual?
on.
Hmm.
Yeah, I never did group. I wish I
Hmm.
did, and now it's like, I know too many people, and I feel like I'm gonna go to group and half my clients are gonna be there. So now I'm like, "Man, I should have gone to groups way sooner," but, group's really cool. But I went to individual,
It's good.
while I was a student at A&M in College Station for a couple of years, and then, at Sam Houston, we were required to go, which
Hmm.
I would have enjoyed it anyway, but I valued that a lot. I think it's very, very important to receive help before you can provide it. You need to know what it feels like on the other side.
Hmm. It makes me think about coaching as well. And so it sounds like from 16, where actually from really when you were a kid and you're kind of expecting this your whole life and probably sitting on edge, seeing your father. I think you mentioned he was in addiction for
Mhm.
most of your life. So, and depressed. So it must have been hard kind of always watching him with this, shaky eye. And I totally identify with my mom being schizophrenic. It was always like managing her crazy, for lack of
Yeah.
a better word. And, I don't use that word lightly. It was always bringing her back to reality if I could, trying to manage myself and my family.
Mhm.
And then when she passed away, it kind of like you said, like when I got the call that she got cancer, I just remember slamming my fist into the side of the car and just like something in me just hit, like you knew this was going to happen. It was,
Yeah.
and then 3 months later she passed away, and it was like in one way cathartic for me, but in another way, obviously not the outcome I wanted, not what I really expected. I really didn't think that would happen. I thought we'd have time, she'd get better,
Mhm.
like something
Right.
would change. But so for you, it's similarly like you had that, and then when the experience happened, then you had 5, 6 years where you had your dogs, you had some counseling, you had your family supporting you on some basic necessities, although probably not emotionally as much as you would like, but they probably couldn't. You had your boyfriend at the time. You had some structure with school. You had your purpose, your faith. I think probably maybe most importantly, um, in your
Yeah.
relationship with God and your trust in that and what you were hearing inside. So I think that gives folks listening hopefully some archetype or some templates for what can help with grief. And I'm sure you touch on each of those as you counsel folks, and I'm sure there's some others. Um, so after your master's, and I guess you reconnected or met your husband in that town, Huntsville, you said. So then, what happened from
Yes.
there? How'd you get to mindful movements counseling?
So I interned at a women's center where I worked with a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of grief associated with trauma as well. With every change there is grief, and with
Okay.
every trauma I think there's loss. So that really went hand in hand for me. So I got a lot of great experience there. I worked in a private practice for a while, and when I got pregnant, I was like, okay, I can either start my own practice now and just go for it, or
Mm-hmm.
I will have to work here and work more hours to
Mm-hmm.
make ends meet. And so I just dove headfirst into starting my own practice, and it's been so great. We're expanding in November. I'm very excited and doubling our office space.
Amazing.
And it's just really fallen completely into place. Um, the name just kind of came to me. I've always been very, very big on mindfulness and just being very much in the present moment. We can't possibly I've planned my life a million times, and it's not anything like I've planned ever. So, it's like you just have to be in the present moment. We can prepare for the future, but over planning just it doesn't really now someone may tell me I'm wrong, but it doesn't really seem to ever go that way. So it's like be here, keep your hands open and prepared for opportunity, but focus on the now. And the past is we reconcile with that, but the past is done. We accept it, acknowledge it, and move on. And we're only here right now. And so, mindful movements, it's very intentional. It's not like a passive thing to be mindful, it's a very intentional act to be mindful and focused on the present. So, that's where the name came from.
And so you were pregnant. You decide, okay, I'm going to start my own practice, and because
Yeah.
it will cost me more hours to work somewhere. I'll probably make less money if I
Yeah.
get a few clients, or if I get this many, I'll break even, or I'll get ahead.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
started, and you probably put some thought. It sounds like you put some thought into the name, and then I'd love to hear, a bit more down the line about how you think about mindfulness. So you started the practice, and you just had your first kid probably at the same time, your
Yes.
child, and
Mhm.
that's a lot,
Yeah.
was that must have been one of the more intense times of your life. So what did you learn from that?
I think I learned how capable we are and resilient we are as humans because I have videos and pictures. My husband was working a ton. And so we were both kind of just starting our careers. And so I would have my 4-month-old baby just hanging out and I'd be putting together furniture for the office. And it
Mhm.
was, it was such a sweet experience. It was just like, you know what? I can do this. I'm capable. And I think it would have been very easy to feel lonely in that, but I
Mhm.
just, I told myself, "I've got this. I can do it. This is what we're doing." And I made it happen. And my son, I'm so thankful for his adaptability because he just a little trooper. I mean, so it was really cool. And I look back on that time fondly. It was intense, but I look back fondly.
It seems like with each of these situations, you kind of put yourself, whether it be undergrad, masters, switching the masters, starting the business, like you almost put yourself in a place where you're like, I've got to do this. And of course, you could have gotten through undergrad and like slacked off and not tried, but you
Mhm.
kind of had a mission and you just went. And then,
Yeah.
at times you modified and you oriented, like you said, like being mindful of the moment that life doesn't go as planned. And when you get inspired or when you hear a message or when you just feel something urgently, you just need to follow it. So I think there's like a
Right.
couple lessons here for folks. A, trying to start a business. B, trying to get out of, you know, a rough situation. Um, and then to adapt it. And then I guess things start to settle. Your son got a little older. Your husband probably
Yeah.
could work a little bit less. The practice
Mhm.
grew. And how did you get to where you are today? And how did the business come to where it is today?
So I hired a few people, and they were great. And just someone told me once, if you build it, they'll come. And so that was my mindset. I was like, I'm just going to take a leap. I was like, I'm not taking out any loans, getting in
Hmm.
any debt for this. I'm just going
Hmm.
to put it out there and hope that it works. And it normally does. I find that when you really just put yourself out there, it seems to pay off. So I hired some people, I put on some advertisements, and we got clients in the door, and it's just continuously grown ever since. This week has been so busy in the best way because we had 2 networking events that I was so surprised someone reached out to us to come present at, their school, and, in a couple of weeks, I was asked to go be a speaker for some high school girls, and so it's like, wow, it's just happening, and it seems like the more time goes on, I'm still putting myself out there and doing everything I can, and at the same time, a lot of opportunities are just being presented, and I take them, and so that's actually what happened with the expansion. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified because it's, a big jump in rent,
Hmm.
and it's gonna take a while to build up to meet that,
Hmm.
because it's completely double in size, but the unit directly next door to me, the
Hmm.
people are leaving, and, the landlord here was like, "Hey, this place is gonna be for lease. Do you wanna take that lease over?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it,"
Hmm.
And so I'm like, if there's an opportunity, I'm just gonna take it, and that's terrifying, but when it feels right, I trust my gut, I trust my intuition, and just, again, sit in prayer about it, and when it feels right, I go for it, which is a little crazy, but it works.
Definitely works. With prayer and with mindfulness and with your gut feeling, how do you like instantiate that on a daily basis for folks? Like, do you pray in the mornings, in the evenings, during the day? Like, how do you stop your day? Because you're probably quite busy with
Mhm,
supervising as well as having patients.
mhm.
Like, what's your day like? I think folks would love to hear, about how you stay mindful and
Yeah.
present.
Yeah. So, the honest answer is it's really, there's no pretty routine. It's just day by
Hmm.
day. My son is 2. I'm currently
Hmm.
actually pregnant and I feel
Oh,
terrible all the time. So
couldn't
I'm
tell
like,
that you feel
I'm,
terrible.
oh, good. It's getting better. It's getting better. But it's been the past 10 weeks, I've been like constantly feeling like I'm on the verge of just throwing up, which is
Hmm.
not fun. But it's like I just do my best and I'm exhausted all the time.
Hmm.
But I just show up and do my best. And sometimes that's going to look like I have all this great self-care and sitting and meditating and doing yoga.
Hmm.
But sometimes sometimes it's just I sit on the couch and I just put my phone to the side and just kind of notice what's around me and, just sit in that for a few minutes before I eat breakfast, and that's what we do. So, it's really just what you can do in the moment, what you can do. Mindfulness, I think that word is, used a lot. And when people present that word, I think it's used in a way that seems unattainable to a lot of
Hmm.
people, but it's really just paying attention. It doesn't have to be the like light the candle, turn down the lights, meditate. It's just pay attention, right? Notice what's around you, breathe in the smells, see the things, outside of the window. That's really all it is. Just focus.
I like how you're making it super attainable. I think it has this elite connotation, maybe because it came from San Francisco or the
Yeah.
coasts, or yoga had this
Mhm.
trend 10 years ago and mindfulness followed. And, I was probably involved in the yoga trend and having taught and all that. And yet, I think you're just saying that mindfulness is a simple matter of focusing and taking a moment to pause. And I mean, many people have their
Yeah.
morning coffee and do that. I guess we can just
Yeah.
maybe, get a little bit into how you work with your clients on mindfulness, on grief, on trauma, and how you, what tools you give them, how long engagements look like,
Mhm.
and of course the results you see are, probably manifest. People always get better with therapy, I think, even a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one you'd like to touch on. I guess we could start with, teaching people about mindfulness. So you just gave one example. Is there any other go-to tools you have there around that? And then we can move to
Yeah.
some trauma stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So I think another thing that if you scroll through Instagram, you see all these things about self-care and all that. I
Hmm.
think that's another thing. Those are very tied together, I think. Um, Something that seems unattainable as well. Self-care and mindfulness, like we said, are not things that are just reserved for, people that have all the privilege of time and money and energy. It's
Hmm.
simply just giving yourself what you need. And so I focus a lot on the words self-care as well. People kind of roll their eyes. And
Hmm.
I'm like, self-care is literally just focusing on your needs, which is mindfulness. So you have to pay attention to what your needs are. And maybe that is, cleaning the kitchen. Honestly, maybe it's cleaning your kitchen that's self-care. For me, if I have my kitchen counter cleared off, my mental health is significantly better. I can deal
Hmm.
with whatever mess, but if my kitchen counter is clear, that's great. That's self-care. Right. Or sometimes it is the fun bubble bath, but most of the time it's not necessarily even fun. It's just paying attention to what do I need for my body, my soul, my mind, and giving that to yourself. And that can be as simple as just, you know, again, drinking your morning coffee and putting the phone away and taking a breath. So I focus a ton on that and just self care as a spectrum. Sometimes it's going to
As a
be, again,
spectrum.
like I said,
Mm.
the nice, right, the yoga and the meditation and cooking a nice meal. Sometimes it's a freezer meal and just sitting on the couch in my pajamas. I mean,
Mhm.
and you just do what you can.
So it seems like for you that, like, getting to this level of cleaning the kitchen counter, like, gets you to this state of like, okay, things are all right, or things
Yeah.
are solid, things are okay.
Yeah.
And so when you have
Right.
somebody coming out of, grief, of loss, out of, just experiencing a trauma, or even in the last year or two, and um how do you tell them this advice, like, hey, start with self-care, what this, like, do you ask them what it means for them, and then how do you keep them accountable to it week to week? um yeah, how do you give people the tools and keep them accountable to them, especially when they're going through
Yeah.
like
So I
anguish?
I do,
Yeah,
right.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely define what does that mean for you? What does self-care mean to you? What does it look like for you? And what is the bare minimum of what you need in your day? Maybe
Mhm.
that's just brushing your teeth. Maybe that's all you absolutely need to feel like, okay, I did something. Then just do that. That's fine, right? That's okay. And then maybe the next day you brush your teeth and you make yourself breakfast, But if we can focus on just literally one thing, just one thing, then you feel like you've accomplished something. You feel like you have given yourself what you need. and you're going to feel better versus feeling like, oh, I didn't do this, and that. It was a bad day, an unproductive day. No, you did something, and that's enough. And so, normalizing the fact that sometimes you're going to wake up and it's going to be a 5% kind of day, that's
Hmm.
all right, you know? And that goes a lot into, I may be jumping a bit here, but that goes a lot into what I tell people about grief is acknowledgement. We use this word acceptance and we have this positive connotation of what that means, but
Hmm.
acceptance doesn't mean like, oh yeah, this is great. I appreciate it. It's awesome. Acceptance is just this neutral acknowledgement of this is what it is. And if your day is just, I woke up, brushed my teeth, and that's all I did, I got back in bed. Okay, that's all you did. This neutral acceptance or acknowledgement of that's all right, or um, I'm grieving and this sucks and that's okay. Acknowledgement that I do feel this way and it's okay to feel this way. You don't have to have some positive silver lining on things.
Right, like somebody passed away, and you need to kind of find, well, it happened for a
Yeah.
reason, or because God
Yeah.
intended it, or
Yeah.
whatever. Sometimes relatives trying to help will come up with these what is pla- idioms? I don't know,
Mm.
platitudes,
Yeah.
and they're usually like positively oriented. I guess when someone's experiencing anguish or grief after uh, a traumatic situation or loss, and they're just trying to do their best, brush their teeth, maybe shower, and try to have a good day, but maybe their partner or their friends or their work are saying like, hey, we need you to do more. That's not
Mm.
enough, or you need to get over this. Like, how do you counsel people on balancing like the lowest common denominator of self-care with someone else's lowest common denominator, which might be doing more?
Wow, that's a good question, and I, have some memories popping up for me that I can
Really?
share, but, um, yeah, so
Yeah,
something
share
I
'em if you want.
wanted
Yeah.
yeah, something I wanted to touch on, this is
Mhm.
something I talk to clients about a ton, is the stages of grief, right? We all know what the stages of grief are. This is a very well-known model, which is great, right? That's good. But that was actually developed by, I think her name's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She developed this working with terminally ill patients. And so those stages were what she witnessed with them. And it's been adapted to just people grieving in general, but there are a lot of criticisms with how it's portrayed on the internet or just in general
Mm.
because it's this step by step process. So you start with one, two, then you go to three, four, and then five, right? You have acceptance at the end, and it seems like this very clean, linear process, and that's not reality. And so, the stages themselves, I think, are accurate and true.
What are
It's
they?
just the
Sorry, for folks out there? Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let me just pull it up so I make sure
Yeah,
I'm
do it.
saying
Do
it
it.
accurately, um,
It's the right
versus
thing.
getting something wrong. Okay, so the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
Mm.
So yeah, I definitely think we feel all of those things, but probably all at once. Probably, like a roller coaster of these things or cycling through all the emotions. Those can all coexist, but it's not this linear step one, step two, step three, step four, step five. It doesn't work that way. And so a lot of people, I think, feel like they're grieving incorrectly when they're presented this model. And there was some research done that it is harmful when websites portray this as very matter of fact. This is what it is, these are the stages,
Mm.
versus like, hey, here are some things maybe you'll feel. Maybe you'll feel them in this order, maybe you probably won't because that's not, we're all different. And you'll probably feel them forever in different ways. So, um, for people who are experiencing, someone maybe on the outside being like, hey, you got to get back to work or you're not doing enough or
Mhm.
you're doing this wrong. I tell them there's no wrong way to grieve. Maybe there are unhealthy coping mechanisms that
Mhm.
we engage in, but it's not like you're wrong for what you're feeling. We just find what feels healthy and right for you in this moment. And we meet you where you're at. And as a counselor, I walk with you through that at your own pace. And so I tell people, however you're feeling in this moment, that's okay. And we can neutrally accept and acknowledge how you're feeling in this moment as that's fine. So if someone is kind of pressing that you're not doing it correctly, I had an experience where I had to go to school. I was like, I cannot sit at home by myself.
Hmm.
I need to go to school and be around other humans. Otherwise, I will sit at home and I will cry all day, and that's not good for me. So a couple of girls were on the drill team at my high school were making fun of me for being at school and how I should be at home and I should be crying,
Wow.
and I, like, overheard this, and I ran to the bathroom and started crying and broke down, and I was like, "This is so I'm supposed to do this all day for how long?" And then you're expected to just come back and get back to normal like nothing happened, and, I mean, you just do what feels right for you, and so if someone is pressing that you're doing it incorrectly, you need to be doing more, whatever, set boundaries. Set
Set
boundaries
boundaries.
for yourself. Yeah, like, "Hey, I this is what I need right now, and this is what I'm gonna be doing, and I will create a new normal." There's no going back to
Hmm.
normal. If you lose someone
Hmm.
very close to you, there's no, "I go back to normal." It's, "I have to create a new normal now without this person," and that takes time, it takes energy, and you don't want to create that new normal. You would love to go back to normal, right? I
Hmm.
mean, but, you can't. And so, setting boundaries for yourself, like, "Hey, I am doing what I need to do right now, and that's enough." And you have to tell yourself that too. Sometimes it's hardest for us to believe that.
Right. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head with so many of those pieces, especially, I mean, the fighting. I feel I hear a lot of fight in your voice, and I definitely identify with that. And you do have to fight for that new normal, right? It takes time,
Yeah.
takes energy, takes a lot of energy to shower, to clean yourself, or as a guy to shave, like get out of the house, go to school, face people. Everyone knows what happened, right? Yeah, just giving the example when I was a teenager and kind of going back in time a little bit. And so when people are pressing on you, it's really establishing boundaries, and that's something that's probably well understood in therapy, how to understand how to establish boundaries. We could touch on it. But I think, what you're saying is believe that what you're feeling is okay, and getting the reaffirmation from someone like you. So people need someone in their corner. Um, And then I guess one more I'd like to touch on, which is also a little bit tricky with unhealthy coping mechanisms. Because frankly, like for me, when my mom passed away, I was running. I joined the track team. Like I was on the track team, but that season I got so much better. I mean, I was so fast. I set the record for my school in one of the races, and no one saw it coming. I just something hit me, and I was like, all right, this is what I'm
Yeah.
going to do. But I was also smoking marijuana. I was also partying. So somehow I still set, record. That's how much energy I had and how much anger I had. But
Yeah.
then I got a lot into partying that summer. And that was, I mean, I don't know if it was the best coping mechanism, probably pretty normal for an 17-year-old. And when I
Yeah.
got to college, I kind of said the same thing you did. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have any of these fears that I had in high school. I was either going to kill myself or move forward. And I decided to move forward. So I wasn't afraid of socializing anymore. I like read a bunch of books on, how to communicate with people. I would approach whoever I wanted. I got good grades. I overloaded in classes. I partied. I taught fitness. I did everything and probably didn't sleep enough. So I definitely feel that fight from you, and I definitely had that same feeling myself. Not everyone has that fight, and that's fine too. And I think if I lost someone at a different time in my life, I might not have the same fight, and bad things will happen. Ultimately, death and taxes are inevitable. So
Mhm.
sometimes people's reaction aren't what I'll say that you and I kind of shared in that. And so how do you counsel people when they are starting to fall into addiction, starting to fall into substance abuse, just really deleterious habits, junk food, whatever. It's a really, I wouldn't know how to do it as a therapist. So how would you do it?
Yeah. So something that I really focus on with my clients is what is when it's time, right? Sometimes it's we
Hmm.
just got to sit with the pain, but
Hmm.
at some point we talk about what do you want your future to look like? And we develop that. We develop who do you see yourself as in 6 months, a year, 5 years from now? And then every choice you make, is this bringing you closer or farther away from your goal? And you have to ask yourself that at every choice you're making. And so with like drugs and alcohol and the partying, like Yeah, a lot of that's normal, and it's like what's normal versus what's unhealthy, that's something we look at on a case by case basis as well. It's like
Hmm.
you have to step outside of it and see, okay, this is a temporary thing for me. And now going toward my goal, I'm going to change some things, which is what you did. You
Hmm.
switched up your approach to your coping and you're like, all right, I'm going to move towards my goal now. And so I think that's a big thing too, knowing like, okay, I haven't had healthy coping in the past. That's all right. Now I'm choosing to make decisions that bring me closer to my goal with every choice I make. So that's a big thing we focus on. And that's a way to keep people accountable too, because hey, did that choice bring you closer or farther away from your goal? And I
Hmm.
ask people that, and sometimes they're like, yeah, farther away. Like, that's okay. That's all right. Now we just continue to make choices that do bring you closer.
I love it. I think it's really, really like harsh sentence. Like, does that choice bring you closer to your goal? But it's also not judgmental. It's a question, right? It's not,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah,
clearly you're not going to be a superstar lawyer if you're if you're going out and not attending to your studies. You're saying, oh, it seems like so you partied pretty hard last weekend. Like, is that going to bring you closer to your goal? And the person might say, no, but I really needed it. And I know that I'm back
yeah,
on the horse on Monday morning. You know what I mean? That's, I don't know if it's normal or not. We
right.
can talk about normalizing drinking and partying in our culture, but
Yeah,
um, I think it's a really nice way to gut check somebody. It's an open-ended, Socratic question, right? As you said.
right.
And so that's how you work with grief. And then I think maybe if we have some time, let's touch a bit on trauma and what you see trauma is, and then a few examples and like how you counsel people to keep themselves together afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I could probably talk for years about trauma. I'm so passionate about it because one big thing about trauma is we all perceive things uniquely. And so, just a quick example, I had an experience in 8th grade where I fainted. I went to the emergency room. Very traumatic for me. I will forever have a phobia of needles and hospitals now from
Mhm.
that experience, which I look back now at 30 and I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, like, why was I so traumatized? But I was, because that was my perception as an 8th grader, being so scared, not knowing what's happening to me. So sometimes we go through things as children, and as adults, we're like, yeah, that wasn't really a big deal. I'm going to just set it down and not focus on it, but it still bothers us. And we're like, why is this still coming up for me? Well, because you perceived it as traumatic back then. And
Mm,
that version of you still hurts from it. And so I think that's a big misconception, even though it doesn't seem like a big thing now, it was for you at that point. And so trauma can be literally anything. It can be something you witness, something you experience personally, something a loved one experiences. It can be literally anything. It's just, do you perceive it that way? How does it affect your brain? How does it impact how you view the world? And if it makes you feel the world is unsafe, I can't trust others, I can't trust myself, um, it's there's probably some trauma there. And so
that's how you
normalizing that
define it.
word,
Hmm.
yeah, it's not, and it's like, do you define this as trauma, right? How did it impact you? Does it still sit with you today? Does it feel like you're still in that moment when you think about it? Trauma doesn't have a timeline. And so, like my 8th grade example, when I think about that, I can feel like I'm still physically there, And
Wow.
so it's like, that's trauma. Trauma doesn't have a timestamp. And so, working with trauma, our goal is to help your brain recognize this is in the past and I can stick it in that past file cabinet. I don't need to leave it open. So, we don't have to reserve trauma for the big things. We call it like big T trauma and little t trauma. It's not just those big experiences that people think. It can be anything at all. And we would just classify that as little t trauma. And that is still trauma. Trauma is trauma.
And so yeah, you're cleaving to the definition, and it's such a overused popular term now that your definition, it seems like, is something that sticks with you even if you didn't want it to stick with you, like almost a
Mhm.
recurring sympathetic arousal in the nervous system, a recurring
Yeah.
stress response,
Mhm.
and not just a stress response when your cat wakes you up meowing in the morning, like what happened to me this morning, and I get angry, but a stress response where you almost like can't control your response in a way. something
Yeah.
something like that with a little T trauma, and the big T trauma would be, any of the really bad things that happen in life that we can all fill in the blank. And so
Right.
I guess you see people right afterwards, if something happens, or you see people who just can't get a few childhood experiences out of their head, or
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I guess everything comes across your desk. So,
Yeah.
how do you work with people on trauma?
So it really, if someone's coming in, more immediately after something happens, it's more just how do we get you to feel okay right now?
Hmm.
And then beyond that, I guess this goes for both people coming in for trauma a long time ago and after they've kind of felt stabilized. Once we get to that point, I do a lot of inner child work. So looking back at that traumatic experience, what would you say to that version of yourself? What would they need from you? What would they respond to you? And kind of heal that version. I did a really cool activity the other day where myself and a client imagined her opening a door into, the most traumatic experience of her life and pulling that younger version of herself out of that door and driving away together. And that was very healing. And so I do a lot of that kind of stuff for people who can think a bit more abstractly. I do sand tray therapy quite a bit, which is we work with figures and we tell stories in the sand, and that provides a little bit of an emotional distance. So I'm talking about this story in the sand with these little figurines versus myself. And so it feels a bit safer. And also, it brings up stuff from our subconscious that we don't really recognize. And so, a lot of uncovering things, a lot of just um, working with that hurt younger version of ourselves. We do a lot of that. I do EMDR, which is a trauma therapy. And that's really cool. It just helps process our traumatic thoughts and help, again, put a timestamp on it, file it away in a file cabinet where it's not just sitting open in your brain because your brain wants to protect you. That's why things kind of sit open in your brain. Your brain's trying to help you survive. And also, speaking on EMDR, running actually is really good, or walking, just anything that is bilateral. So walking,
No
with
way.
footsteps back and forth. Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. So EMDR, you either do fingers like this, well, you probably can't really see,
No, I
and you
could
would
say,
follow
yeah.
those with your eyes.
Hmm.
But they're called tappers. They vibrate in your hands. You close your eyes, you hold them in your hands, they vibrate back and forth. So that's a trauma therapy I do quite often as well. It really just depends on what the client needs and what they're open to exploring.
You listed quite a few. I've done the EMDR, love it. I mean, it actually
Mhm.
changed my life. I mean, within three
Oh yeah.
months, I started feeling emotions like that I hadn't felt in like
Yeah.
15 years. Like I was getting emotional when a girl I really liked didn't reciprocate. Like I was almost crying, and that hadn't happened to me in like, I don't know, 10
Yeah.
or 15 years. You did like sand play therapy, inner child work where you're imagining a situation and pulling yourself out. I mean, each of those really make you reimagine the situation, but in a calmer way.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
touched a bit on the neuroscience of like, bilateral movement. So I don't think people realize all these therapies are out there. I think people think, okay, I go to therapy and I talk, and I'm like,
Right. Mhm.
no. I mean, you're playing in the sand, you're using these
Yeah.
vibrating sticks, or watching a light diode go back and forth, or doing tapping on
Right.
yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
therapy's really evolved. I mean, so good. We touched on trauma, and we touched on grief quite a bit. And I guess I'm, just curious as we're finishing up here, like what message do you want to get out there for people? I know one you shared is, what is this contributing to your future that you want it to look
Mhm.
like? What else would you want to get out there to people considering therapy, people considering getting any kind of help, people going through really rough times?
Yeah. I think one big thing that you just sparked an idea in my brain. One big thing I would really like for people to know is if you go to counseling and it's not a good fit, right? I
Hmm.
went to a counselor who would just talk and she didn't really provide much. And I didn't get anything from that. So I went to someone else and I got a ton from it. You have to find the right fit. Every counselor is different, every counselor does different things. So look at their bio, see what they do. Do you want someone more passive or more directive? And you will find the right fit. So don't give up. That's one big thing. And also just we're all on the journey. It's a never ending journey of healing. And wherever you're at on that journey is absolutely okay. And we all just keep walking forward. And you get to decide what's at the end of that journey for you.
I love it. Um, Mikayla Williams, thank you so much for coming on Green Pill. I think that's an awesome place to stop. Where can people find Mindful Movements Counseling? Can you tell us your site, your social, all of that? And I'll also link it in the notes.
Yeah. So, website mindfulmovementscounseling.com, Instagram mindful movements counseling, TikTok I think it's just mindful movements.
Mhm.
Um and yeah, that's where we are. I try to post some good mental health stuff. I know it's so done now on Instagram and TikTok whatever, but I try to post some good things
Mhm.
just about our counselors. So, yep, that's where you can find us.
Nice. And you folks are seeing patients in Texas and
Yes.
virtually in Texas? Hmm.
Yeah, virtual and in person.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Mikayla Williams, thank you so much. This was really, really a pleasure. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm so glad we got so deep on and so honest and so forthright and real on grief and trauma. I think it's really important. So thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for listening to my episode with Mikayla Williams. I hope it touched you as much as it touched me and you really got something out of it. Please share this with folks in your life going through grief, going through extremely tough situations. They will get through it. They can get out of it. Sometimes they're not ready for therapy, but maybe this is an intermediate step. I personally believe therapy saved my life during the time when my mom passed away and allowed me to get through and to become who I am today. So please share this. Your support is appreciated. If you rate, if you follow, if you review my podcast, wherever you're listening, it really does help spread the word. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time on